Thank you very much. Well, I have a unanimous consent request, too, before we begin the questioning. The Center for Regulatory Solutions has issued a paper by Karen Kerrigan, 5 Things You Should Know Before the Senate EPW hearing on EPA's ozone proposal. One of the things that the author mentions is about this Lung Association poll. They went back and recast the poll and asked an additional question about costs. Once costs were factored in, support for the EPA ozone proposal plunged. When asked if they would be willing to spend $100 more per year, roughly half of the support vanished. And when informed that the study actually estimated that stricter ozone standard would cost $830 per year, a majority of voters opposed the EPA's plan outright. Also, I would point out that a number of experts have weighed in that the additional proposed drop in ozone standards does not have any effect on asthma, as has been alleged here. Roger McClellan, past chair of the EPA Clean Air Scientific Advisory Committee, wrote this: "The EPA and the environmental lobby claim a stricter ozone standard is needed to reduce asthma cases. But these claims rely on a much higher ozone level from decades ago, which we don't experience anymore. Recent history does not support this claim connection. In fact, for well over a decade, asthma cases have increased by millions, while ozone concentrations have declined." So, Mr. Chairman, I ask for unanimous consent to insert this paper into the record also.
Without objection.
Ms. McCabe, you indicated an unprecedented outreach effort was made to the stakeholders. I can tell you that folks at Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality didn't notice this unprecedented outreach. They say there were a couple of internet-based seminars. There were some rarely held discussions concerning state-specific information. And they complain that you used regional data to impose requirements on the states and did not equip them with actually the tools to do this. So let me ask you, what do you say? Can you give me specific examples of how EPA worked with states? Because my state director says you didn't. And also, why did you use the larger geographic regional data rather than state-specific data? Because the requirement is going to be placed on the states, not on some regional governance.
Senator, thank you for the question, and I'm very sorry to hear the reports from your DEQ, because it's really hard for me to imagine how any state could say that we did not make every opportunity available to work with them. I personally have been involved in dozens and dozens of conversations and meetings with state officials, and we have invited any state that wanted to spend time with us has been afforded that time. So it's distressing that it would be reported that way. In your second point, let me make clear that in the Clean Power Plan, we use both regional and state-specific data to develop the final goals for the states. We looked broadly at the regions across the country, especially the 3 interconnects, because that's the way the power system operates. That's the grid on which the utilities operate, and resources, as we know, electricity resources are not confined within state borders. They flow across and among and between states. And so in looking to see what opportunities were available to utilities to manage their assets, and indeed many utilities operate in many states, that was the way it made sense to look at that data, because that's the way the system works. When we got to developing each state's specific target under the Clean Power Plan. That's when we took each state's specific mix of sources into account and applied our nationally consistent emission rates for coal and gas plants to each state's particular mix of sources to get a tailored target for each state.
Well, let me just say, my 5 minutes has expired, and this is so complicated that it really doesn't lend itself to a series of 5-minute question and answer periods. I'm going to submit several questions for the record to you, outlining the objections of these people with a clean air agenda in the state of Mississippi who feel that basically you've given them something that cannot work for our state. Also, I've got questions about one specific power association in Mississippi that simply would have to double its budget to comply with the solar-powered requirements that are being put on them. And so I'll submit questions for the record, but I think we've got a regulation coming at states and consumers that is going to absolutely explode the cost of power and be unachievable for people who are trying to work with your agency and do the right thing.
Thank you, Senator.